Okay, this is part 3 for the read-along for Unit 3.01, New Materials and Technology. A New Age for Art, Joseph Paxton. Just as photography altered the nature of artistic expression, other areas of art and design experienced growth and change during the early 19th century. So remember, we're talking about the 1800s when we talk about the 19th century. One of the leaders in architectural innovation was Joseph Paxton. Born in 1803 in Bedfordshire, England, Paxton spent his early years working as a landscape gardener. At the age of 20, he took a position at the prestigious Chiswick Gardens where his talents caught the eye of the Duke of Devonshire. The Duke eventually appointed Paxton as chief gardener of his family's country estate, Chatsworth House. It was here that Paxton began designing large, glass-covered greenhouses or conservatories to accommodate the Duke's vast collection of plants and trees. Joseph Paxton's Crystal Palace. Prince Albert, the husband of Queen Victoria, was looking for a way to impress the world and promote Great Britain's industrial power and ingenuity. Soon plans were in the work for a great exhibition to be held in London's Hyde Park in 1851. But this showcase needed a building to house it that was as innovative as the technology displayed inside. Exhibition planners chose Joseph Paxton's pioneering iron and glass building design, which came to be known as the Crystal Palace. Paxton based his proposal on a greenhouse that he had built earlier. Advances in technology during the Industrial Revolution allowed him to create an enormous iron skeleton that held large glass panels. So Joseph Paxton was this guy. You can see him in this picture. He was a landscape gardener. And whenever he was 20 years old, he got a job at Chiswick Gardens and did a really good job. And the Duke of Devonshire, who's a member of the royal family in England, saw his work and was impressed and made him the chief gardener for his family's country estate, Chatsworth House. That's the really big palaces that are out in the country in England that these royal family members live in. And at Chatsworth House, Paxton began designing large glass-covered greenhouses or conservatories to accommodate the Duke's vast collection of plants and trees. And he went from designing those greenhouses at Chatsworth House to creating this building that we see here, the Crystal Palace. The king and queen were going to have a great exhibition, which was basically a show and tell for England to show the world how great they were doing. This happened in 1851, and they needed a building to put their big show and tell exhibition in, and the building had to be just as impressive as everything they were showing and telling. So Joseph Paxton designed this building made of iron and glass, and it came to be known as the Crystal Palace. So he based this design on a greenhouse that he had built earlier, a much smaller one. And because we were in the Industrial Revolution and there were all these new technologies being invented, he was able to build this enormous iron skeleton with all these glass panels in it that became the Crystal Palace. Innovative construction. Paxton broke many architectural traditions with his iron and glass building. He kept the structural supports visible instead of hiding them within stone or plaster walls. The glass-walled building blurred the dividing line between the interior and the outside world. Visitors were amazed that such a delicate-looking building could enclose such a massive space. A precursor to modern-day prefab construction, Paxton's design incorporated basic units of mass-produced framing and panels that workers quickly erected in a relatively simple process. The immense building took 2,000 men less than a year to complete. It was dismantled after the Great Exhibition and relocated in the London suburbs. The Crystal Palace survived until 1936 when a fire swept through it and destroyed the palace in a matter of hours. So, um, Paxton broke a bunch of traditions when he made this building. He kept all of the supports out where you could see them. Normally, the support structures of a building would be hidden where you can't see what's holding the building up. Because everything was made of glass, it sort of felt like you were still outside even though you were inside a building. And the visitors were amazed that such a delicate looking building could enclose such a massive space. So it had all this light coming in, all this space, and it was a huge building, and this just hadn't been done before. A precursor to modern day prefab construction means that this was sort of one of the first times that a building was made in small pieces that got put together. So if you think of it as sort of like building with Legos, right? Paxton had all these panels, these metal panels with glass, built somewhere else and then brought in, and the workers would put all of those panels together to create this building, just like when you're building with Lego bricks. It took 2,000 men less than a year to complete. That's very impressive for the time. For a building of this size, for it to take less than a year to be completed is really impressive. And unfortunately, the Crystal Palace is not around anymore. But the Crystal Palace has inspired architects worldwide. They've designed structures based on Paxton's Crystal Palace. And here you can see some of the names of some buildings in other cities that are based on the Crystal Palace. The interior. Measuring more than a third of a mile in length, the sprawling Crystal Palace covered 18 acres and provided nearly 1 million square feet of unobstructed floor space for exhibits. It had the largest enclosed area of any structure built up to that time. The Crystal Palace also offered the world's first public restrooms. Millions of visitors passed through a series of exhibit halls containing displays of art, machinery, manufacturing, and raw materials. The center transept, with its soaring arch, served as a performance space for concerts and was home to a lively circus. So the part that we see in the photos with this big arch, that's the center transept, the center of the building. So this place, like we said, was huge. It was more than a third of a mile long, 18 acres, and nearly 1 million square feet of unobstructed floor space for exhibits, meaning like at one big space, unobstructed floor space. It had the largest enclosed area of any structure built up to that time, and public bathrooms, which were new in the 1800s. Millions of people came through to see England's show and tell of art, machinery, manufacturing, so they had machines that were actually making things, and raw materials. So England would say, hey, look at all this raw material that we have. Aren't we a great and powerful and wealthy country? And that is it for Unit 3.01, New Materials and Technology.